Hi, everybody. Broadcasting from our recording compound high atop Moose Jaw Mountain. This is Skeptarchy. I am one of your hosts, Eric.
And Kevin.
I'm Dell.
And I'm Cory.
All right. We were just talking about how daylight savings time is affecting some people's lives and not affecting Cory's and I's here in Saskatchewan.
Fuck daylight saving time.
Right.
This recording got very confusing when Cory messaged and said, "Everybody ready to record in an hour?" And I went, "What?"
Oh, see, I wasn't even paying attention to the chat. I was just like, "Oh, that's right. I got to do recording later tonight." And I waited until what was 9:45 my time to jump on, and you have to find out that Cory and Eric were both waiting on there for an hour.
Well, not quite, but
luckily it took me about an hour to get my gear ready, so I would have been an hour late anyway. So it worked out in my favor. I was the guy that showed up to work an hour late because of time change or whatever. But we were talking about it, and I had kind of mumbled something about having heard that daylight savings time had to do with dairy farmers in Saskatchewan in the early days of programmed milking machines not wanting to have to reset their clocks twice a year. And that's what I had heard, and I haven't researched anything, but maybe you have some insight into this one, Dell.
Well, if dairy farmers got daylight savings eliminated in Saskatchewan, that would be awesome, because in the US, there's this pervasive rumor that daylight savings time was made for farmers. And actually, farmers have opposed it from the beginning. Like, farmers created their own lobbying group to try to get rid of it and to lobby against it. And it's one of those things that, like, for some reason in the cultural mythology, it literally just switched to the opposite at some point. Like, the rumor switched to the opposite of what it was, and they figure it had something to do with the fact that farmers were lobbying so much against daylight savings time that they just got associated with daylight savings time, and then nobody remembered that they were associated with it because they hated it, and they were the only group actively politically trying to get rid of it. But yeah, so I wouldn't be surprised if farmers were the people, because especially dairy farmers absolutely hate it. My grandpa still refuses to observe it. He just doesn't change any of his clocks or his watches.
He's just like on his own solver.
I'm like, what do you do when you have appointments? I don't understand. Like, you just have to remember that you're an hour off from the rest of the world. Okay.
I guess so. Hey, make it hard on yourself.
Yeah, just have to move to Saskatchewan. Problem solved.
Yeah, that's right.
There's a couple U.S. states, aren't there? Isn't it like Arizona? One of them?
Arizona and Hawaii are the only two states that don't observe DST, but weirdly enough, it's not all of Arizona. It's like 2/3 of it, because the Navajo Nation still does. But the Hopi Nation within that Navajo Nation does not. So there was a video I watched that said you can drive in essentially a straight line through Arizona and have to change your clock 7 times. Wow. Because you have the greater Navajo Nation, then you have the Hopi Nation, then you have a smaller bit of the Navajo Nation inside the Hopi Nation. So yeah, it's an absolute insane system. I personally think we just need to abolish the concept entirely and base it off. I would really love to stop all of these arbitrary land borders that determine time zones, and just make it nice 15-degree slices of the earth and base it on solar noon in the middle of that slice, and then you're done. You don't have to deal with this shit anymore.
Yeah, we have
Let's just focus on abolishing daylight savings time first. I feel like that's perhaps a more achievable goal for the moment.
And then we wouldn't have the one North Dakota town with its own time zone like we have too, which is always kind of thrown me off a little bit.
That's probably just a holdover from the days when individual towns kept their own time, and they didn't want to conform to when time zones were established.
Right.
I want to know who is lobbying in favor of keeping daylight savings time. Like, you either hate it or you don't give a shit, right? I mean, who? I don't understand.
I don't think anyone is lobbying to keep it. I just don't think enough political will exist to get rid of it. It's very much a situation of no one cares enough, even though the majority of people dislike it. No one actually cares enough to do anything about it because there's always much more, seemingly important shit like elections. Oh, and on that note,
Yeah, right. What has happened again?
yes, Joe Biden has officially beaten Donald Trump in the election for the president and is now our president-elect, which means Donald Trump is the orangest of lame ducks.
I have to say, I was sitting in my deer stand in the middle of central Minnesota, like probably even deeper red country than where I live, because it's about 40 minutes west of where I live. And I still heard after the announcement a bunch of celebratory horns honking, and there were celebratory fireworks somewhere nearby that night, which I found very heartening. And my Trump supporting family members, some of whom were hunting near me, all said that Donald Trump was being a pain in the ass and should just shut up and go away and take the L. They don't care. So that was also nice to hear.
There you go.
Yeah, very, very.
Yeah,
And I just had the greatest idea of eating duck l'orange on January 19th.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice. Very nice. Very apropos.
Yep.
How did you celebrate the victory, Cory?
I didn't.
No?
I'm still not convinced that the world is actually going to do that.
It's going to be any better?
Yeah, well, we'll see what the aftermath is because, of course, there's going to be recounts and court challenges and all sorts of shit between now and then. So, everyone knows Joe Biden won, but they're going to fight tooth and nail to contest it. And
I'm not too concerned about the result getting overturned with votes.
no.
The only thing that's bothering me a little bit is all the chit chat they've had about trying to call for a second election, just because I haven't really looked into how bullshit that is. Like, I'm pretty sure all of their court challenges are bullshit, and they're not. There's just too many states that they need. They need to overturn like 4 or 5 states.
I saw a change.org petition, which supposedly had 1.5 million signatures that was like either recount or just redo the entire vote for 2020. And I'm like, A, the logistics of that is absolutely insane. Yeah. B, you really want to recount every single state, even the ones that went hard blue, really? And C, since every state manages its own elections, you would have to get this passed in all 50 states, or at least the ones that are, important. And they've already been through enough shit. I don't think they want to go through that all over again. I think they really just want to get this done and over with, get the results certified, sent off to Congress, or sent off to the electors, and, let them do their shit.
And I have heard some rumblings. So the way this works, which I have never needed to know before, but I do now, is that first, the states certify their votes. Then they have to send their representatives from the Electoral College to take the Electoral College vote. Then, right around the first week of January, Congress has to receive the Electoral College's votes and certify that they are accurate. And so what I've seen is a lot of Republican members of Congress saying that they're going to vote no on that. But Democrats still hold the majority.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's specifically... Oh, sorry, one sec. Damn it, I dropped something. One sec. It is specifically up to the House of Representatives to certify the vote. And because the House of Representatives is solidly in Democratic hands, the chances of that not being certified is slim to none.
Yeah, I figured there's nothing they can do, and probably most of them are going to certify anyway. There's just a few that are going to try not to. So
yeah, depending on the outcome in the Senate, if they were doing the certification, there's a small chance I could see of them not certifying it, but it seems unlikely because as shitty as most Republicans are, I feel like there are enough who will be like, okay, yes, finally we can get this guy out of our hair, and they would be willing to certify that result and get Trump out of there.
Yeah, I really feel like the Republicans got in bed with the devil, and he's going to rip them apart on his way out, which is going to be really amusing to watch.
Indeed.
Yeah. As much as as much as he can. Anyway, I get the impression that Mitch McConnell and like the leaders of the Republican Party, they're like kind of okay with the fact that he lost, and now they can distance themselves as much as.
Yeah, which I'm curious to see what's going to happen in the midterms, because I feel like there are still more than enough Trump sycophants out there in the electorate to, to actually take his take his word, or, listen to him come the midterms and start, I'm guessing he's probably going to start campaigning against some of the more, or the less Trumpist Republicans, and start primarying them. And, basically we'll have a Tea Party 2.0 situation.
Yeah, I have to wonder kind of if we don't get the Senate, which my hopes for Georgia are somewhat low just because the Republican money and propaganda machine is so effective.
Yeah.
I have to wonder if not having taken the Senate will be better for us in the midterms. Obama rode in on this big blue wave, and then 2010 was just horrible, right?
Yeah.
So I know it feels shitty that we can't do anything without the Senate, but I also wonder if we would have only had those 2 years to do anything, which Joe Biden would not have done anything very radical anyway, and then we would have just been completely fucked in 2022,
Yeah, I mean, you make a good point. I honestly, I feel like the Dems are probably breathing a slight sigh of relief that they didn't win back the Senate, or they're not likely to at this point, mainly because if they did control all three, executive and both branches of the legislature, they would be expected to actually do stuff. And so, they're breathing a sigh of relief that they can continue blaming the Republican controlled Senate for obstruction. So they don't actually have to do anything. They'll just blame it on them. Say, oh, well, we can't do anything. They'll just block whatever we send. Yada, yada, yada.
Yeah.
It could be.
Although, I mean, they were kind of talking about packing the court, right?
So yeah, there has been some talk of packing the court. And just for anyone who's somehow not in the know at this point, basically the idea is that the number of justices on the Supreme Court is not set down in the U.S. Constitution. It started at, I believe, 6 and has expanded to 9 since then. But the legislature can at any time. I believe at the very least they can expand. I'm not sure about the rules regarding restricting or removing justices, or removing the number of seats anyway. I imagine they'd probably have to wait until one died and then pass something, or pass something that says the current justices can live or can stay until they either retire or die, but then no replacements can be made or something like that. But the argument is that if we expand the number of justices on the court, we can then appoint our own justices, our own meaning liberal Democrat justices, to even out the damage Trump has done. I don't honestly think that's a good idea.
I don't know that Biden would appoint liberal justices. He would give us
very good point.
another Merrick Garland, a few of those.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so the idea of it is it sets a pretty horrible precedent, because then next time the Republicans control get back that kind of control, they can do exactly the same thing and just pack it their way. And then you just have this ever escalating power struggle on the Supreme Court. And I don't really see that as a good thing. Granted, I'm of the opinion that abolishing the Supreme Court might actually be a reasonable step at this point, and
the Electoral College while we're at it.
Well, yeah, the Electoral College,
and the Senate.
I have had a hard time finding anyone who genuinely believe the Electoral College should continue to exist. Those few that do, I can convince them pretty easily by reminding them that the President of the United States represents all Americans, not just a few in less populated states. And that all of the arguments about what the Electoral College is supposed to do, they fail at miserably. So there's literally no good reason to keep them about. If you have heard any, most likely they are poorly informed propaganda by the right, because the right knows that the Electoral College marginally benefits them because, granted, if we get rid of the Electoral College, I'm sure we'll see the voter suppression tactics, get pumped to 11. So there's a lot of shit that needs to be done, but every bit and piece, I can think of 20 different ways that both sides could potentially, take it to their advantage, and we all get fucked in the meantime.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I have seen, what do you guys think about the concept that maybe the polling is so off because of voter suppression? So like, the polling was just terribly off in Wisconsin, and Wisconsin has just like really strict voter ID laws and stuff, which they only put into place in 2011 once the Republicans took control of the governor and their Congress. It's just been a trend since about the year 2000 for Republican states to try to restrict early voting, eliminate early voting, add voter ID laws, stuff like that. If it's people saying that they support Biden, thinking that they're going to be able to vote, and then for whatever reason, it's a 4-hour line, so they just can't get around to it, or they don't have their ID, or they realize how difficult it's going to be, that kind of thing. I don't know, because the polls were just so off again.
There are a lot of factors into that. Voter suppression definitely counts for a bit of it, although we did see the highest turnout an American election has, I think, ever seen. Although we don't have all of the numbers in, we do know that more votes were cast in this election than in any historical election. Whether or not that translates to a higher percentage of the voting eligible population having voted is unclear at this point. But voter suppression is going to be part of it. Another part of it is just the general polling methodologies, because they still rely largely on people with landlines, and just generally doing
what a horrible idea.
Yeah,
No kidding.
it still relies on some very archaic methods to.
How did they get a single person under 40 to answer any of their questions?
That's the point, is they don't generally get younger people represented well in that polling. And so because of that, they end up skewing. And so you end up with rather inaccurate polls. Some places try to account for that. 538 does a very good job of doing a lot of hand waving and say, oh, well, there's still, this chance of it happening. And so, they kind of are able to skim by on their predictions by saying, well, there's a margin for error. So if we're wrong, we're not really wrong. We just, one of the more unlikely scenarios happened.
Right. Yeah.
But general polling methodologies really need to make a major shift in how they're done. And so, we need to find better ways to get an idea of what people are thinking. I know in Massachusetts, there was a ballot question to get ranked choice voting set up across the state. And the last poll that we took suggested that, we were going to win in a landslide. We not only did not win, we lost by about 10 points. Wow. So, the polling there was really, really terrible. And I'm also disappointed as hell because, well, I want ranked choice voting, damn it. So I tried to do what I could to get that to pass, but alas, it didn't happen.
Did the Conservatives play the voter access game in Canada yet?
No, we don't have like gerrymandering, and there's a minimum number of polling stations in each area. Like, you'll never spend more than 10 minutes going to vote. So,
well, that's how it is in red areas.
I'm curious if that's true in like Ontario and Alberta, where where the Conservative Party actually does control those provinces. So,
Well, I mean, the Conservative Party controls here, but Ontario, yeah, like actually, I was listening to something the other day that said like Ontario citizens were talking about the long waits that Americans had to wait for their voting, and they couldn't believe it because, like, say, like 10 minutes. You go 2 blocks away to the nearest polling station. Like,
well, wasn't their entire freeways being blocked by pro-Trump caravans and things like that?
Yeah.
Not on
Or was
election day, but they were
that-
blocking early voting, which was particularly problematic because of COVID.
yeah, and like even here in Boston, there was an event I heard where someone like firebombed an early voting, ballot collection box and destroyed. I think the number I heard was like in the tens of thousands of ballots, but I don't know that for certain. I haven't looked into the details of it, but yeah, there were definitely ballots destroyed prior to voting day. So that was, yeah. Hopefully people were smart enough to keep an eye on whether or not their ballots were accepted, but I'm guessing a lot of people probably didn't. Not that it really mattered
kind of shit
too much.
That's going to let them call a second election.
Yeah, not that it mattered all that much here in Massachusetts, of course. But yeah, I'm sure there are plenty of places where a lot of these were razor thin margins. Like I think Georgia is only is under 5,000 votes different between Trump and Biden. So
I think Arizona might land about there too.
Yeah.
It's going to be pretty tight there by the end. But yeah, I live in a blue state. Well, Minnesota has the highest voter turnout of any state in the US almost every election. We always do.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
so we obviously have really good voter access.
I heard something the other day about like Minnesota has, objectively the best election system out of the entire US. Like
And it's not fancy. So I took my roommate to vote with me, and she's never voted. She's only voted in New Jersey. And apparently they have like these complicated computer, like it's not a computer screen, but it's like a screen. And you like, okay, I fill out like a bubble sheet, like as if I were taking a test, right? And I feed it into a little Scantron, and it tells me right there what counted it. And I never have to be there for more than 10 minutes. And I don't need a photo ID. I could register on the day of by just bringing a piece of mail. In fact, I registered my roommate. I was really annoyed because the poll worker was like, right, but we need ID. And I was like, no, you don't. I'm vouching. All you need is a registered voter in this precinct to vouch for you. And I'm vouching for her. And we had to get her supervisor, but we did get it done. But
good.
So all you need to do
Massachusetts
is
won't even do same day registration.
Everyone should do same-day registration.
Really
Anything that can't do same-day registration is the biggest load of shit I have ever heard in my life.
Honestly,
why would you make people register months in advance for an election and then you cut it off? Right? In Georgia, if it's 30 days before the election and you didn't get all your shit in, you're screwed. You can't vote.
Well, I'd personally just rather see automatic voter registration. As soon as you turn 18, you're registered.
Also obvious.
Yeah. I hadn't voted in Canada for quite some time. And I was able to register basically when I showed up at the polls to just be able
That's
to sign
how everyone
stuff.
should do it. Anything else is just an excuse to be an asshole.
Yeah. Well, I will say this is the first time that I have heard of like international election observers actually watching the US elections, because there was so much there's such a big threat of people doing shit to try and affect the election outcomes. So this was the first time I'd ever heard of it happening in the US. And I made the remark, and I'm sure a number of people have, that if the US saw what was happening in the US election, they would be invading the US to give them democracy. And I'm just like, dear God, that is accurate.
Well, and the forms of identification that you need have started to become a lot more, I don't know, strict, I guess. It's not driver's license anymore. Like when I was living and working in the US, I don't think I would have qualified to vote. I wasn't able to, like, it's a weird gray area. And having observed it myself, and I can assume this happens to a lot of Latinx people too, where it's like you can kind of work and they'll take your tax money and you can get a driver's license and you can even get a social security number, but you just can't quite get this other thing that, whether it's a passport or whatever else, right? In order to be able to access a lot of these things, which the new driver's license are going to require, and you need those so that you can get on a plane. So, without this certain documentation, you're not getting plane rides, you're not voting, you're not driving a truck. I found out, there's just all these different things, these different kind of
it's
things we take for granted that they're able
system.
to take.
Yeah, it's this new Real ID system. They're making it a lot more stringent, and very shortly, like you said, you won't be able to get on a plane. You won't be able to do a lot of things without one of these Real IDs. So, like, even if your license doesn't expire for several years, as is the case in mine, I still have to go and get one so that I can do all of these very basic things that a standard driver's license used to let me do, but no longer.
And in Minnesota, we have at the moment a Republican legislature, but a Democratic governor. And our Republican legislature repeatedly passed legislation preventing Minnesota from ever meeting the federal requirements for our IDs. Until it came down to the wire, and we were like, no Minnesota citizen will be able to get on a plane if you do not pass some legislation. But they freaked out, and they said it was like a privacy concern, that they didn't want the federal government having our data or something. And I was like, they gave you the social security number?
It was the Republicans who wanted this thing to happen in the first place because it helped enforce the fucking voter suppression laws. My God, they are so good at fucking themselves over and fucking us all over at the very same time. There's a lot of fucking going on for the Republican Party, who seems to be very anti-sex.
And none of it feels good.
None of it feels good. Right.
Yeah, I think it was because we had a Democratic governor, so they just wanted to just make as much trouble as they possibly could. I don't know.
That honestly sounds completely and totally plausible.
It did feel really good to be a one-man Joe Biden parade up and down the streets of Moose Jaw, honking my horn and waving in the air. Immediately, as soon as I found out the news, your average Canadian probably wouldn't have found out till that evening. But I'm guessing there's quite a few people in Moose Jaw that later on went, "Oh, hey, I bet that's why that guy was." Like a maniac all over the place.
I found out yesterday morning while I was at the car dealership getting my car fixed. So that was an interesting bit of news to receive. Especially when I'd been watching the election results come in for 3 or 4 days beforehand. So yeah.
Well, I think a lot of people could use just a bit of hope right now in whatever aspect of their lives, right? So, like, to have a positive change, from a progressive.
I love that you just mentioned hope and change when Obama wasn't running.
Oh, yeah, right. I'm still stuck on that whole ideology. Whole fantasy. Never stop believing. And then even while I was trying to keep it positive, and then I just remembered that Alex Trebek has passed away.
Oh, don't remind me.
I know. I hate to be that
man,
guy.
I was extremely sad when I learned that, and the irony about me learning that is, we had to rent a cargo van so that we could pick up a bed that we were buying from someone, because it was a queen bed and wouldn't fit in our SUV. And so, this van didn't have any of the preset, radio stations that we usually listen to. So we were just searching around, and we randomly stumbled across, I think it was a sports station. Didn't realize that at the time, because it was just some guy talking, and randomly heard about Alex Trebek from that. And I don't think I've seen anyone else talking about it until just now today, but that's possibly because I haven't been, in the places where that would normally be shown. So yeah, I was very disappointed when I heard about that, because I have loved Jeopardy ever since I was a kid, and Alex Trebek is Jeopardy. I do not think it possible that they can replace him.
I don't know. I had always hoped to at least apply, you know, the pre-test or whatever to try to get on Jeopardy one day, and I still would like to, but it will not be the same.
No,
without Trebek, for sure.
Although my spouse did bring up a very funny idea. So you know how SNL had those Jeopardy sketches that they did, and they usually had the Sean Connery character just getting just pissing Alex Trebek off. Right. Yeah. And so they suggested getting the ghost of Alex Trebek to be one of the contestants, and the host being Sean Connery. And I thought that was just too damn funny.
That's just perfect. Yeah, they did have that whole Coral on SNL going. There's been times when I've gotten cable television just so I could watch Jeopardy at 4:30. Like maybe a little bit of like ancient aliens.
Everywhere I've ever lived, Jeopardy is available on broadcast.
It was like my $50 a month Jeopardy bill or whatever. But yeah, it's pretty sad.
No, I don't think I ever had Jeopardy on broadcast because I have no emotional attachment to Jeopardy. I've got nothing. I don't know.
Yeah, everywhere I ever lived, it was on one of the local affiliates because it's been syndicated for decades. Back when I lived in California, I think it was on ABC. Around here, it's on CBS. It's always on one of the regular affiliate broadcast stations. So usually around 7:00 at night. And that is how much I have been obsessed with Jeopardy that I know that information just right off the top of my head.
Right. And it's good for guys like me that know, just a little bit about a whole bunch of stuff and don't really specialize in anything. So it's, I kind of get to flex for that 20 minutes a day or whatever.
Yeah, it is nice to like be able to you hear one of the answers and you know the question and you can answer it before any of the contestants are able to. And there's just something nice about being able to have that little flex.
I agree. What else is happening out in the world?
Well, I have a local election thing, sort of. So not a district that I got to vote in. The district that I live in for Congress used to be Michelle Bachmann, who got replaced by Tom Emmer. But just one district to the west was a Democrat named Colin Peterson, who has gotten a lot of hate from the left because he is one of the handful of Democrats that will vote with Republicans a few times a year. And then he gets, put on a list and yelled at. But he was really important to me because he was one of the only farmers that's been in our government in recent years, and he was the head of the House Agriculture Committee, and it was very nice to have a local person be the head of the House Agriculture Committee. But of course, because of his stances, he got no support from the Democratic Party or the Democrats, and he got kicked out by a super duper conservative Republican who was the person who led the Minnesota legislature in being giant asshole obstructionists for the last 10 years. So now she gets to go to Congress, and we don't have any farmers on the House Agriculture Committee anymore.
Oof,
that's cool. Actually, there might be one guy from California that's a farmer.
If you say the name Doug LaMalfa, I will I want to strangle him. I used to live in his district, and I think he is a farmer.
Is he? It sounds familiar.
Yeah, he represents, I want to say, California's first district, though the numbering may have changed since I moved. But it's geographically the largest district because that is the part of California that has no one living in it. Yeah, I think the congressional district is literally the size of Wyoming and the same number of people. Yeah, but I hate him with every fiber of my being because he represents the absolute worst of the hyper conservative bullshit that region has. So
apparently Doug LaMalfa is a rice farmer.
Yeah, I can see it. I don't. I am not entirely sure how a place as dry as Northern California can have enough water for a rice paddy, but Okay.
Yes.
Irrigation, I guess.
I mean,
Which is why you're out of water there.
Yeah, that's
Right.
right.
To be
Right.
fair, it's
I don't know.
Southern California that's out of water. We have a whole ass Shasta Lake to deal with, or to get our water. Granted, Northern California ends up selling all of that to Southern California, but that's a whole other story.
Mhm.
No, I just remember that it was like the elected person with the lowest net worth in our government was this dairy farmer because he's been bankrupt like 3 times from California.
I don't mean to laugh, but yeah.
Oh no, I mean,
no, feel free to
I
laugh.
do kind of laugh
Right.
because he's like one of, it was a fairly large mega dairy, and they're not any more solvent than the rest of us. They're just too big to fail. So that's why I find it kind of funny, is because they're still milking cows. They just went through bankruptcy. Unlike somebody like me, if I go bankrupt, I'm fucked. But they can just reorganize or whatever, because it's all through, it's a C corporation or whatever their structure is, and I don't know.
Under a different owner or whatever, how it goes. Yeah. Wait 7 years and start again, I guess.
This David Valdeo, is that it? Maybe.
And we had
Anyway,
a switch
sorry.
in provincial government to here, and Cory would know a lot more about that because he's been doing some podcasts. What are your thoughts on Saskatchewan's new leadership?
Well, it's not new. Yeah, no, we've had this
Okay.
is the 4th mandate for the Sask Party, the Conservative Party in Saskatchewan. So, I mean, it's been 13 years. It's going to be another 4 more. So,
Oh,
that's
okay.
fine.
I was under the impression we had to change, but
No, it's just the same old, same old. Our entire province is conservatives.
mhm.
You in Alberta. I mean, at least you guys aren't trying to dismantle your public health system.
Not yet. No.
Not yet,
Well, the Sask Party, from what I understand, is working on it. There's definitely
Okay. They're
anything
just
that
not
belongs
quite
to
as
the-
far along as the Alberta Conservatives.
No, anything that belongs to the public is gradually being sold off and things like that. We no longer have like a bus system or anything like that.
Yeah, that's right.
And from what I understand, that was removed because one of the reasons was because it was used to transport medical gear. So they removed the bus system and then privatized the medical gear transportation, coincidentally to somebody who the premier knows, and so that
Go figure.
Yeah, right.
I'm sure that's just a coincidence. There's no corruption there. Yeah.
Right. Just happened to be the best person for the job. Yeah.
Yep, totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've got municipal elections tomorrow, actually. So we'll see if we get a new mayor, I guess.
Right. Yeah, we've got that going on too. We've got the cougar problem coming up. We've got a really nice valley actually in Moose Jaw, and part of the concern is the ongoing thing. It's really pretty, so people who have wealth want to purchase it and live on it, and those of us who don't have wealth want to keep it really pretty so that we can enjoy it and walk our dogs on it and stuff like that, right? So there's that whole ongoing thing going on, but I'll probably have to get in there and cast my vote. I don't know a lot about him. I know one of the people running for mayor of Moose Jaw is a First Nations musician, which I found interesting.
That's interesting.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Might be the kind of shift we need, Well, it's an interesting place too because we have the Festival of Words here too, which if any of you can ever make it to, is just an awesome thing. I was only there once last year and I was able to take in a bunch of poetry and prose and stuff. So
Cool.
pretty neat. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I looked up. We don't know if that poor dairy farmer is going back to Congress yet because he was defeated by a Democrat who owns a nut processing business. And they had a rematch, and it's too close to call. So,
Okay.
I don't know if we'll have a nut processor or a bankrupt dairy farmer representing that part of California.
Right. So the guy isn't what you would qualify as like a nut farmer. he kind of is involved in the business of processing them.
Yes, that's what the Democrat is. I don't know. It doesn't sound like it was the greatest campaign. I'm not really convinced by anyone whose resume says they started multiple businesses. That just makes me nervous about them in general as people.
Right.
Because it usually means if they've started multiple businesses, they don't mean like someone who is actually like a gig worker. They mean like, I have investor money, and if they're a politician, they probably were more like the investor types.
They do love to leave out specific bits of information, such as the word successful.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I've started many businesses. How they ended is an entirely different story.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Started, I don't know. There's nothing else about it. He started 2 businesses to process nuts. It's a very strange resume. Is that not just a really odd resume? That's all it says about him and his life in general.
Well, when did we shy away from putting specialists in charge of, the departments that are in their occupation? The heads of education are have no education experience, and it's just going on and on the way. It would seem that Trump has kind of butchered, that whole thing. But
well, funny enough, that's actually why I've been I've been mulling for a few years the concept of, rather than having elected politicians, you just take randomly selected people from an area and have them represent that area for a couple of years,
like jury duty. It's like it's your turn.
Basically, you would have, a representative government based on a jury duty type system. Just you randomly select a person, they go to Congress for 2 years, then they come back and you select someone else, and on one hand, that does help eliminate a lot of the kind of the facts that most politicians are wealthy business people and don't actually have a damn clue what's going on. Obviously, there's a whole subversion of democracy problem, but I'm sure we can figure out a way around that. But yeah, it
takes
the marketing out of it. Marketing is a big problem in campaigning.
The seeking of power, and you would you'd want to make sure it would have to be like, our records show that you are not too much of a turd, Cory. So therefore, we want you to represent our region for the next 2 years. And you'd be like, oh no, I just started.
How do you get out of it?
Yeah, right.
I don't feel like juries are the right way to decide when people are guilty or innocent. So I'm not sure that I'm down with letting them be in charge of the government. Juries are kind of terrible.
We're just talking one individual.
Yeah, well, I mean, there may be other considerations you could take into account, such as them going there not necessarily to make decisions, but rather to just communicate decisions. You have
based on direct democracy within the community.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So sense. You send someone whose only job is really to just be a delegate who has no real decision-making authority.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I got pulled for jury duty for the first time, but because of COVID, it's all shut down. So no jury duty for me, I guess.
See, now that is an interesting thing you point out, and one I hadn't really considered until now, which is, how have jury-based trials been working throughout the times of COVID? And I have no idea.
I think some states shut them down.
Yeah,
I mean, that's what Minnesota did, basically.
Yeah, but that makes me wonder. That's got to create a gigantic backlog.
Yeah, my roommate has to go get her name changed, and we have to do that in court in front of a judge. And we're like, we haven't set the date yet, but I'm sure it's going to be like in a year or something.
Yeah. Yikes! That's
she needs to bring us as witnesses.
Okay. I got a speeding ticket apparently in September, and I got it in the mail. Well, yeah, I got it in the mail.
Speed camera.
Yeah, a speed camera.
Oh.
I'm disputing it. So I but on the ticket it said the court date would be in December, but I got a letter saying that actually the court date is more like April. So,
Important
probably
thing
why.
to know.
What's that?
Yeah, I got summoned for jury duty just before I left North Dakota, actually, and I thought,
Oops.
wow, this is strange, you know. Like, but yeah, oops, you're right. I wasn't to be in front of the jury, thankfully, but you know, if it's just strange what kind of things you qualify for, you know, like
So that brings up an
not
interesting question, Eric. Do you have dual
uh,
citizenship?
I'm in a gray area of that right now because of paperwork process. So let's just say
Oh, okay.
the recent election results have kind of motivated me to want to be a dual citizen more.
Oh, I
You
see.
know, I wasn't exactly sure how that was all going to play out or whether or not. But no, I've got a little bit more paperwork to file. What is it? What is the next trivial thing to prove that my ancestors did roam America?
Geez,
My
yeah.
mother's first husband's divorce paper. I can't discover which county that was in, so I'm trying to narrow it down. And hopefully, once I get that, then they'll say, "Yeah, you are indeed from America," and I'll have all the paperwork done.
Oh,
You know, and
okay.
it's doesn't seem like very much, but you know, these things go on and on. And
Well,
after a
it
while,
just
you know,
it just makes me wonder how you're getting pulled for American jury duty if you're not officially a U.S. citizen yet.
right. You know, I couldn't drive the truck, but I could decide somebody's fate you know, in prison or whatever. And
Sure.
yeah, so it was kind of weird, but and you know, like I say, I can't be the only one living this kind of thing, right? Like, but I just have the benefit of having the option to, you know, leave America in the country that I am a citizen of. It happens to be pretty awesome in my opinion, you know, stuff. And there's a lot of opportunity here I couldn't imagine if I had to go back somewhere that was incredibly dangerous or, you know, things like that.
Actually,
Things are
speaking
pretty
of
scary.
Canadian politics, did I hear that there was an election recently? Maybe it was in British Columbia. I feel like I
Yes.
heard. Yeah, I heard that the NDP like reaffirmed their majority in BC.
They formerly had a minority government, and then they have a majority government, so they can pretty much do
nice.
whatever they want now.
Nice.
Good.
Well, here's hoping they actually do shit because God knows liberals won't.
Yeah, the thing about that we've observed here is that people like a lot of these parties, they'll campaign as leftists, like, but then they'll pull to the center all the time.
Oh yeah,
and it doesn't matter which original party they were, like the NDP, the Liberals, like everybody, like on the left anyway, they all kind of campaign as farther left than they actually govern.
Oh yeah. That's entirely to be expected, quite frankly. I mean, that is the problem with liberal democracy is, you know, no matter how far left you campaign, you always move to the center or to the right. Is more accurate, I would say. So it's like there's this universal political redshift.
Yeah, it's.
Or depending how your colors countries may go, blue shift.
yeah, that's right.
Yeah, in America it's red shift. Everywhere else, I think it's probably closer to blue shift. But
yeah,
that's unnecessarily confusing.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, I was told, and I don't know how accurate it is, that the reason that like the Republicans chose red is because it's considered a color that is associated with leadership and strength.
Oh, they didn't choose shit. This was all done by the media back in the early 90s.
Okay,
they just decided one day we're going to represent the Republicans as red
so
and the Democrats as blue, and no one said otherwise, so they just stuck with it.
American media is just contrarian to the rest of the world. So.
Yes, everything about America is contrarian to the rest of the world, with the exception of capitalism.
Yeah.
Right. Well, I think there were some positive things that came out of these past few months, I'd like to think. I mean, in my mind, being able to see the results of slowing down our consumption because of COVID and, you know, how cities were able to see through the smog again, and that kind of thing. It, in my mind, it gives validity to human-caused global warming. So I always knew it, but I feel like we have undeniable proof now.
I mean, we've had undeniable proof for a while. It's more getting people
But we
to
could
believe
feel
the
this.
undeniable proof, to stop
Right, but we
denying
could
the
feel
undeniable proof of it.
I have a really important question. Speaking of undeniable truths, this has been a topic of conversation in my household. So there are two.
it.
There's QAnon conspiracy theories, and there's
Yep.
flat earthers. You're
Okay.
somewhat familiar with flat Earth, I'm hoping.
Yeah.
My
Mhm.
roommate has been listening to Oh No, Ross and Carrie and just got to the flat Earth episodes, and she was legit like, I thought it was ironic. I didn't know
No.
flat Earth people
I
really.
spent
Anyway, so I have a
spent
question.
entirely too much of my online life debating with God or God's honest flat earthers who just would not listen to anything you say.
So which set of conspiracies, QAnon or flat earthers, like which one is more ridiculous to believe in?
Oh,
boy.
geez.
Mm.
I
mean,
say
I gotta say
QAnon is
flat
more
Earth.
ridiculous. I can
Yeah?
understand how people don't understand the actual like science and astronomy behind Earth shapes.
No, see, it gets deeper than that. It's not just plain ignorance. They go out of their fucking way to look at and then find holes in every established scientific fact regarding the shape of the Earth and its orbit around the sun. Because these people aren't just flat earthers; they're also not
They're like
heliocentrics.
young Earth creationists and shit, right? Like it's a lot of it's very
of the time,
biblical.
yeah, they're geocentrists, they're young Earth creationists. They do it like some of the most ridiculous things I've seen are depictions from the Torah of how the Earth is set up with the firmament, the Earth, and Sheol, which is the Jewish term for death down below. What the Christian mythology would call hell. And they believe this is how the Earth is actually structured. And my mind is blown by if it was just simple ignorance and you could educate these people out of it, which I tried to do for a very long time to very little avail.
You can't win arguments, man.
Yeah, well, fair enough. But if it was just a simple education issue, I would agree with you. But no, these people go fucking. Flat Earth is, to me, the bottom of the conspiracy theory barrel. Not to say that there's only one bottom, but it's kind of one of those things where if you believe that, you probably believe all of these other things above it.
Yeah, see, I feel like I understand why these people don't believe any of they're like, I can't see it. The Earth looks flat to me. It looks flat from where I'm standing. So so I feel like it's more unreasonable to believe QAnon bullshit. I feel like QAnon is lower. But my roommate says pedophiles exist,
Yep.
baby murderers exist. So those are
Epstein
things
was
that
a
exist.
Famous, yeah. Epstein was a famous pedophile who had power in political circles.
Yep.
I don't
So
know.
you're all on my roommate's team? You think?
I think they're both ridiculous.
I mean, yeah, they're both ridiculous, but honestly, I still maintain that Flat Earth is more ridiculous because, like you said, at least with QAnon, there are elements of truth, and they are just massively misrepresented and blown out of proportion. But at the very least, there is some small basis in truth. Flat Earth, you got fucking nothing. You got nothing.
Understanding that the Earth is round requires you to take something that you're looking at in front of you and convince yourself that it's an optical illusion, and therefore
That's what I'm thinking too. As a flat earther, you have to actually deny scientific facts to prove this. Something like QAnon is so abstract and so bizarre that you can't you don't have anything in front of you to really deny or to promote.
It's made up whole cloth almost.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
Yeah, I just don't know.
Yeah, I feel like one is denying one of the most well-established scientific and naturalistic facts in the universe, and the other is proposing a slightly crazy, well, no, I won't say slightly, a fairly crazy version of events that already exist, and they're just blowing it way out of proportion.
Right.
So
one of the greatest things happened last time I was visiting the beautiful city of Regina. They were having a anti-mask protests on one side, and then on the other side were the Flat Earth team, and a street performer whose first name, a clown, a local clown. How would you say, off duty, I guess, not in her regalia, ran up and mooned them all, and I just saw it right on, and then she ran back to wherever she was centered from. But I thought that was pretty great. But I can't say.
Yeah, I imagine the Venn diagram there's probably quite the Venn diagram of flat earthers and QAnon believers. Like, there's lots of overlap there.
Yeah. But I mean, when your whole belief system involves Antarctica not actually existing and just being a giant ice wall that the UN has soldiers guarding 24/7 who will shoot you if you get within 20 miles of it.
Pretty ridiculous.
Also, possibly like either a projection, like a very expensive projection onto the firmament of our solar system, or maybe like the sun is actually on a mechanical thing that's moving it all the time. I've seen that.
And the moon emits its own cold light, which they so this one is delightful because they demonstrate it by leaving shit outside. One will be, it'll be a clear night, full moon. They'll leave one object, on a table, another a foot away, but in like a box or something that shades it from the moon's light. And then they will take temperatures of it. And the one that's not covered will astonishingly be colder. And
by what? How much?
Usually a few degrees, like 2, 3, 4 degrees, maybe. I'm talking Fahrenheit.
In a box.
Yeah. Yeah, they put it in a box. A thing that will slightly thermally insulate the thing. And of course, you're going to have a slightly higher temperature.
Why do they need to? How does the moon emitting cold light work in? Why is that important? Why is
because it denies that the moon reflects the sun's light, which is if the moon reflects the sun's light and we're on a flat Earth and both of them are circling up above us, then it doesn't make sense because
they also think
the reflection angle is all
Australia is fake, right? Because then
some of them think Australia is fake. Well, no, they don't necessarily think Australia itself is fake. They think that there are no plane trips that go between points on the southern hemisphere. They think they all have to go to the northern hemisphere because if you look at the what they call the flat Earth map, which is really just an azimuthal shit, I forgot the name. Anyways, it's basically an unfolding of the globe on a single point, which is always the North Pole. And so if you look at the routes on that particular map projection, they are ridiculously long, and so because most of the world's population is in the northern hemisphere, most flights will go to the northern hemisphere, and then you will have another flight that goes back down south. And so it looks like if you're looking at it on this projection, that route makes more sense than going, all around the circle.
Right. I see.
And so they claim that these flights don't exist when in fact they do and happen, multiple times a week. And they're just like, oh no, you can't, like, you can see the flights on their website, but you can't actually buy them. Or, people who say they've taken these flights, well, they're just paid actors or some shit like that. Like, the conspiracy goes deep with these people because of the fact that they have these incredibly basic reality-based facts that they can't they can't refute, and so they just find ways to say, oh well, they're being made up, and like. Or this whole thing about planes constantly having to tilt their nose downward to follow the curve of the Earth when they don't realize, gravity kind of does that automatically.
So, you clearly have talked to a lot of flat earthers.
Way too many.
I will give you
Way
credit
too
for your
many.
patience.
What is okay? So this is the question that my roommate had for me. Okay, but why? Why are people fooling us into thinking the Earth is round? Like, who is the bad guy? Like, why?
This is
That's a
this is
good point.
lovely.
That's
So
a
it
good
depends on the core reason of their belief. If they're
Right.
religious flat earthers, then they believe it is a conspiracy to make us stop believing in God and therefore to control us by
I'm confused about why the shape of the Earth has to do.
Because there are multiple mentions of the Earth being a circle in like Old Testament Torah scripture. Granted, spheres are also circles, so they don't have to be flat.
Mhm.
But yeah. So basically, the idea is that usually this goes along with like the evolution deniers. Yeah. So
All of geology is a fraud or something.
exactly. So if the Earth is a sphere, if it circles around the sun, therefore we're not the center of the universe, therefore we are just tiny beings in a massive cosmos, therefore we are not the most important beings in the universe, and we're not created specifically by God for some unknown purpose. Well, then that just breaks their entire theology apart, and therefore anyone who's trying to convince you that the Earth is not in fact flat will, is part of this conspiracy to deny God and they're of the devil and yada, yada, yada. Then the non-religious ones, I still have yet to quite figure that one out. Like why
Aliens, New World Order.
See, the thing
people.
is, I was going to say the whole the concept of the aliens doesn't really work if the Earth is flat, because that just fucks everything up. The reasons why they're really hard to figure out for the non-religious nutters, but the religious ones, at least it's relatively easy. Yeah.
Yeah, I told her if she really wants to feel more pain like that, she should go listen to Be Reasonable. And the only episode that I ever listened to that involved a man arguing that the Earth was hollow and inhabited by Nazis.
Yeah, that's another one that comes up from time to time, is the hollow Earth theory, where there's a whole like internal surface to the Earth where people live, and like the Nazis didn't actually disappear, they just moved into the hollow Earth.
That was I was visiting somebody, and they put on what they called the news, and it was full of things like that. It was hollow Earth tunnels used by the Fourth Reich through Antarctica, and on and on.
This is Doctor Who, right? Like that.
Doesn't some of the tunnel stuff, Cory, connect to QAnon though? Isn't the underground tunnel demon thing part of the QAnon thing?
There is some of that. Like I don't know a lot about it, but there was a guy who thought that there was under a specific museum or something, there was like a secret tunnels that led down into something.
I'll bet anything that specific museum is the Smithsonian, because that's always a
really?
of these things. Oh yeah.
And there.
Why? I don't know if this makes any sense.
That's always the question, right? Like why? Like what is this?
I guess.
Well, I mean, the Smithsonian is right next to Congress and all that, so it's the whole, if it's a giant government conspiracy, then the big government funded museum is going to be at the center of it,
I suppose. Yeah. It's gotta be.
Yeah, I thought they often just obliquely reference sort of underground demon stuff sometimes, but
yeah, I don't know.
Well, hell is underground, and hell is where demons live, so obviously it all fits together.
They're all just
whatever keeps your followers in line, I guess.
Yep.
Mhm.
Okay. Well, that
Critical
was.
analysis is not in these people's vocabulary.
I
Right.
learned things. I'm not sure if it was good for me to learn the things.
I'm
that
not.
I
Ha-
learned
I'm not a
tonight.
happier person because of it.
The collective
Right.
IQ of this stream dropped a point or two.
We can't unforget.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Unlearn, I mean.
I have not
there we go.
actively interacted with these people in at least 4 years. The fact that I still remember this much of it, it disturbs me.
Right. Right.
Wow, that's.
It's just awesome.
All right.
I'm
We
sorry.
have
I'm
proof.
still picturing the Nazis on the upside down part of the ground that
Yep.
in the Hollow Earth.
This is 100% a Doctor Who episode. I'm sure.
I mean, the whole lizard people living under the earth thing, that is definitely, that was the race was called the Silurians, and they were just a reptiloid, they were just the evolution of reptiles rather than mammals into humanoid creatures. So
Speaking of reptiles, so apparently, like the libertarians have gone like full on, like they had David Icke at their like convention.
Oh,
oh my
really?
God, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
I didn't hear about that
read
one.
that somewhere. Yeah. Like they, yeah, I mean,
Is that
they
how you
went
pronounce his
full
name?
on-
I always thought it was David Icke, and just because it
It's
sounds.
Icke.
Well, I'm going to continue
Yeah.
pronouncing it David Icke because that's what he is.
Because ick.
'Cause,
Yeah, it's spelled ICKE for people
Yeah.
listening that might be having the same confusion. Yeah, it's David Icke, and yeah, they've gone full on. I can't even call it pseudoscience. I mean, the lizard people thing. That's not even pseudoscience is like
that's just
chiropractic,
straight.
not.
That's just straight up anti-Semitism.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and that's the deep down, I've had a few internet arguments about the inherent racism of the ancient aliens before you even get to the David Icke lizard people part of it, but just the idea that for centuries, actually, white people have been ascribing the artifacts that they find to other people that can't possibly be the natives that they are interacting with. They did it when they came over, to the Americas. They immediately
They still do it
created
to this day.
Yeah.
Well, and that's what a lot of Mormonism is about, right? Is that like,
Mhm.
there were actually Jews living here, and the Native Americans must have killed them all, and the Jews actually built all these cities and stuff, or whatever. The
Yeah, I had a
Mormon
guy on Twitter
belief
the other
is.
day who tried to convince me that black people visited the Americas before natives did.
Yeah, that's
According to the
then,
Mormon religion, natives are the Lamanites, I think they're referred to. And from my understanding, I don't know if we're special or what it is, but we kind of just all turn into, I hate to use the term white people or whatever, but from my
Yeah.
understanding, that's what the end game is for us Lamanites, according to Mormonism.
Yep, the 13th tribe of Israel came to America, turned into
Yeah.
native people.
Yeah, well, and there's some like I don't know what they call themselves, like Black Israelite groups that are like Black nationalists, but they are they believe that their race are the original Jews or something, and that's sort of interconnected with the theory that Africans came to the Americas first, which unfortunately there is no evidence of that
Of course.
at all.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's.
Well, I found it funny that even the earthen mounds were attributed to aliens. Like, these primitive people couldn't possibly have piled dirt. Had to have been some otherworldly force.
That pile's much too big.
Like the best evidence I've seen from the people claiming this is the vague similarity in the appearance of certain tools, as if people with the basic technology of smashing rocks together might not just come to the same ideas despite being several thousand miles apart with a giant ocean between them.
Yeah, I
it's not
saw
possible
one
for them to
was-
have similar designs at all. No.
it was showing like artwork from, different places, like Mayan artwork and Egyptian artwork and whatever. And in all of them, humans were carrying small bags and they were like proof of aliens. And I was like, bags? Because we all came up with the idea of bags. I feel like bags is a very basic concept that, anyone could really appreciate the usefulness of a good bag.
Yeah. Let's take this
right.
animal skin, wrap it around the stuff we want to bring with us. That is not a hard idea.
Carrying things is too hard. Aliens did it.
Yes. How could we possibly have discovered better ways of carrying things without communicating with each other? But anyway, and then you get into the David Icke stuff, which all of the lizard people stuff is just thinly veiled anti-Semitism. So,
and David Icke, for those of us who are unfamiliar, is an English soccer player turned traveling lecturer.
He's like the the originator of the lizard people live among us disguised as our overlords / rich Jewish people theory.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But
quite some time ago. Many decades ago.
This knowledge is based on his experience in soccer, right? It's not.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
He learned it in soccer, and
right. Okay. Well, that validates it.
Yeah, clearly an expert in lizard people.
He did, in fact, come to fame as an English footballer and sports commentator, and used to be the spokesman for the Green Party of England and Wales. Dear God.
Yes, he did. I knew that.
I bet the Green Party wants to leave that one out of there.
Oh, I absolutely do not doubt it. Yeah. Evil shape-shifting lizard people from the fourth dimension. Let's completely ignore the fact that the fourth dimension is time, but
they come from
I honestly, that has been one of my biggest pet peeves in most science fiction, when they use dimension to mean like another reality, because a dimension is just essentially a line across which you can have multiple points, and the more dimensions you have, the more points you can define. And saying things are from the fifth dimension makes literally no sense.
That's similar to my pet peeve with pseudoscience has always been the vibrations or
oh God.
You got to be on the right frequency. Feel this magic thing. Right.
Yeah, or energies. They take all of these.
That's not how that works.
Yeah, they take all of these, scientific ideas, the fact that yes, energy has to flow for work to be done, that matter vibrates at certain frequencies, at least according to string theory, and they take them to these absolutely insane places that they think they can somehow apply to some human level. I'm like, no, these are quantum effects. They happen on the smallest of the small scales.
I can think myself into a higher frequency, though.
They love to call it quantum, though. Of course, they totally agree. It's quantum entanglement, Kevin. Yeah. Thank you for accurately bringing up exactly how their magic works.
Very
yeah, the overuse of the word quantum is just like, ugh. I get that it sounds fancy, but it comes from the same root as the word, a quantity. It was literally meant to be. A quanta was the smallest, the smallest particle, or the smallest amount of a thing. Like a photon is a quanta of light. And that's where we get the word quantum from. But no, they got to use it to mean some pseudoscience magical thinking bullshit, and have literally no idea as to what it actually means. It just sounds nice.
Well, it does sound nice.
It sounds pretty photosynthesis.
Okay, fair.
It sounds pretty photosynthesis to me.
It sounds very magic.
Right.
And to a point, I kind of have to blame science fiction for this, because they have been doing this shit for a long time and, skewing the meanings of it. And as much as I love science fiction, it is, that is my bread and butter for all entertainment. I do have some issues with it in that, can you please stop trying to turn actual scientific terminology into bullshit because you're setting a trend.
Technobabble. Yeah.
So. Anyways, I think I've yelled and ranted enough.
Yeah.
Oh,
I have
in positive news, Gwyneth
Hmm.
Paltrow's Goop Labs got renewed for another season on
Oh
Netflix.
shit! Seriously?
Yep. While Hassan Minaj's Patriot Act got canceled. So,
Oh, I really should have watched that more.
so, yep. The world is still moving into the wrong direction.
Yep.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. Well, I've got some research to do about Gwyneth Paltrow's Goop, it sounds like. So I'll be an expert on that by the next time we meet at the
That
very
sounds
least.
good.
As
I
far
had
as I understand, it's basically just shoving rocks up your vagina.
Oh, that whole thing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
If it's alternative medicine, it's part of her thing.
Yep.
Okay.
I'm honestly surprised Goop hasn't turned into an MLM at this point.
I bet
that
it
is totally where it's going next. You are so
Yeah.
right.
It might already be an MLM for like richer people.
See, that doesn't even make
I don't
sense.
think it is yet. Yeah, I
All
can't
right.
believe she hasn't made an MLM already, actually. Because
Yeah.
And maybe
that's
she
her whole
has, and I
deal.
just missed it.
Her whole deal is like mixing it with men's empowerment, right? That's why she sold like that vibrator necklace that was literally like a vibrator, like the sex toy, not like vibration, like we were just talking about.
Right.
You know, which is like, a vibrator is a real thing that you can use. That is not pseudoscience, but
That will work.
yeah. But she had to mix it with also, stinging yourself with bees and steaming yourself or whatever.
Yep.
Oh, that's my little
Sounds
battery
interesting.
notification.
Well,
So
Next time
Sounds
someone
unpleasant.
Right.
Yeah.
next time someone talks about crystals and chakras to you, just remember you can always use a crystal to stimulate your root chakra. Stick it up your ass.
Yeah.
No, I think we lost Dell, so
I think
All
so.
right.
hopefully
I will
that
be
didn't
calling it tonight.
screw up her recording, but I guess we'll find out.
Mm.
All
Okay.
right.
Awesome.
Sounds
Have
good.
a great night, guys. Good
Yep.
talking.
You guys have a good night.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Bye.
That's all from us. Thanks for listening. If you want to find more of Skeptarchy, you can do that at skeptarchy.com, or you can follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/Skeptarchy, or you can follow us on Twitter at SkeptarchyPod, or you can contact us through email at skeptarchy@gmail.com. Thanks for listening.